Oh, the bell. Come in.
Hey, Gwen, is this the right time for movie night?
A few minutes late, Ben. Gosh. Unbelievable. Can't you ever go to bed early, or are you too busy fiddling with the Omnitrix?
Oh, come on, cuz you know I can't go to bed early with all kinds of hero stuff going on. Superheroes do not take rests.
Well, some do. A lot do, because even heroes need rest.
Amen. Hey, Gwen, did you two finish watching the Knuckles series?
Ben and I are only halfway there, and let's keep the spoilers to a minimum, Sonic, as how cool that show is.
Right, not having to talk about the show with the red echidna I actually teamed up with when I actually met Sonic and the others for the first time. That echidna with red lightning and anger issues, that is. Touche. Sorry, I had a visit with my therapist.
You have a therapist? I did not know that.
Ben didn't tell you? Well, you know how we told you about our adventure in the Starfall Islands? Yeah, I really started holding back on pranks then, and I also started developing PTSD.
Sonic, I'm so sorry to hear that. First Tails, now you, but you have matured ever since that adventure, for the better. And it's a good thing you were holding back on praying. Sorry that's been a difficult time for you.
Thanks, Gwen. I've been doing those routinely breathing exercises, and my PTSD is doing fine at the moment. If I keep up those breathing exercises, that's what my therapist said. Eh, personality wise, you became boring. Mental health wise, I'm so sorry. But hey, I do find you less annoying now. By the way, where's Ranger? Hey guys, sorry I'm late. Traffic is a nightmare. Uh, Ranger, what the heck are you wearing? It's my new look. You know that t-shirt I had a very long time? Well, I've worn it for years and it was time for an upgrade, I thought. And no, man, you do not get to turn it to upgrade just because I said the word upgrade. Yep. But I thought it was time to upgrade my look. So there. It's 2024.
I gotta admit, dude, your new look is awesome. You, your jacket represents Ben's jacket from Ben 10 Alien Force. Pretty cool. And nice goggles.
Well, it started when I headed out to the shop to pick my new look, and I saw it in the shop, so I picked out this jacket, the orange shirt, the gray sweatpants, and the goggles, and tried them on, and they fit perfectly. Heck, the goggles even had the numbers 1, 2, 3 on them, so I thought they looked good on me. They sure do. Now, what movie did we say we were going to watch again? Seeing as Gwen's won another science exhibition? No. She won the science fair this week. So, what movie did we agree on as a celebration?
It was the school science fair, Ben. I won first place 'cause the judges liked my project. We're watching the first Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire.
Great idea. I can't believe it's been 12 years since that movie came out. And I think we should do a review on it once we're done. Sounds good? Sounds good, Sonic. 2 hours later. That movie never gets old. I mean, everyone has seen it. We've seen it. Tails, Solon, and Shao have seen it, although they're on vacation. But still, E has seen it. Megan Bangalore has seen it. Laser has seen it. We've seen it. Grandpa Max has seen it. All my aunties and uncles and other cousins have seen it. Mario has seen it. Kelly has seen it. Donnie has seen it. Black Doom has seen it. Melgax has seen it. Loki has seen it. Even Eggman has and Sage have. But Manic and Sonia have seen it yesterday. Well, what do you expect? Of course they haven't seen it until now, because they've been locked up in the Starfall Islands around that barrier for years. Yeah, but at least we're living together again. And that was 3 months ago. 4, to be precise. Anyway, shall we start the review? Sure, but we might want to be careful. Why? What's the worst that could happen? Well, last year, David reviewed this movie as his 1976 film review series to prepare for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, but this is our own review, so let's be careful, okay? Sounds good, Ranger. The movie begins with the Columbia, a Sony Pictures Entertainment Company logo that lasted until this movie to The Amazing Spider-Man. And then we see the iconic comic book flip Marvel logo, aka the Marvel Studios logo that lasted from Iron Man to Iron Man 3. Lucky! Who am I? You sure you want to know? The story of my life is not for the faint of heart. If somebody told you it was a happy little tale, if somebody told you I was just an average, ordinary guy not a care in the world, somebody lied.
After the opening credit sequence, Peter Parker, played by the one and only Tobey the Man Maguire, or Tobey Maguire for short, or as you got him on memes, Bully Maguire, which isn't until Spider-Man 3, is narrating. Explaining this story is about Mary Jane Watson, played by Kirsten Dunst. Peter wanted to say it was Flash, played by Joe Manganiello, not the Flash. Grant Gustin or Ezra Miller, Suicide MJ, and Peter was catching the bus and told the bus driver to stop.
They eventually let Peter on the bus, and he apologized for being late, but students made fun of him for being late. Peter was just trying to decide who to sit beside, since everyone picked on him in school, and then Flash's bite trips him over, and he becomes a laughingstock on the entire bus. And later we see Norman Osborn, played by Willem Dafoe's limo, arriving. Harry Osborn, played by James Franco, asks the limo driver to park near the entrance or far away, but Norman tells Harry that the entrance is right there, but Harry doesn't want to show up for the field trip in the Rolls because of public school kids. Norman told Harry to not ever be ashamed of who he was. Harry somehow forgets his bag, and then Harry introduces Peter to Norman, and we see a line which was repeated Spider-Man No Way Home that Norman is something of a scientist himself, and Peter studied all of Norman's research. And he didn't seem so bad. Norman wanted to adopt Peter because he was a genius, and they were in the eastern seaboard of Columbia. Who knew that Columbia would eventually be helping Sony with Spider-Man? Wait, Columbia and Sony are the same studio? Yeah. Since they're the same studio that also helped out with the Spider-Man movies. And Peter tries to get pictures for the school paper, but Flash and his fight just push him over. And Harry tries defending Peter, and there's a series of spiders in the facility.
You do realize something. Some spiders can change their color to blend into their environment. It's a defense mechanism.
Thanks for the science fact, Gwen. I'm sure no one needed to know that. Anyhow, since MJ was there, he was too nervous to even talk to her, so Peter insisted that Harry went over. And then the teacher interrupted, but Peter wanted to get some pictures of MJ because he needed one of a student in it, and got some pictures. And some girls called MJ over, and poof! Peter gets bitten by a radioactive spider. Ouch! And then the DNA samples combines with Peter's on the screen as they're repaired. Meanwhile, at Oscorp, they are testing weapons, kind of like something Obadiah Stane would do in Iron Man Armored Adventures. General Slocum is inspecting Oscorp weaponry like an action glider, and Dr. Strom explains it, but General Slocum said that he's already seen the glider. But Norman has a talk with General Slocum and the board, but General Slocum gives Norman 2 weeks to see if they can work on human performance enhancers. If not, he'd have to pull Norman's plug, which made Norman really worried. And they'd be forced to go back to Formula. Back to Formula?
Ben, you really didn't have to do an impression of Willem Dafoe.
And Uncle Ben, played by Cliff Robertson, rest in peace by the way, is changing the light bulb as the Lord said, "Let there be light," and voila, there was light. And Aunt May, played by Rosemary Harris, is impressed, but Peter is not feeling well, and he said he already had a bite, and goes upstairs to crash, but he actually needs to fall asleep. And remembers that there were 15 genetically enhanced super spiders, one of them being missing, which actually happened to be the one who bit Peter, and thus the spider genes fused with his own. Are you referring to that fiery brown dragon hedgehog? No, Ben, I wasn't. But then at Oscorp, Norman tests performance enhancers, but then Dr. Strom tells him that they aren't ready and the data doesn't justify the test. But Norman insists that risks are part of a laboratory science, and thus he has to take off his shirt to test the performance enhancers and goes into a chamber with green gas, see how well the performance enhancers do, and the alarm goes off, and Norman is in peril. Dr. Strom rushes in after tying off and performs CPR on Norman, and thus the rise of the Green Goblin throws Dr. Strom across the room, and light
Psst.
Then Peter wakes up and notices he can see without his glasses. Wow. And then he leaps off the wall and brings his lunch money to school, but Uncle Ben tells Peter that they're cleaning that wall when Peter gets home, and Peter tries to have a polite conversation with MJ since they've been neighbors since they were free, and then Peter realized he was going to be late to catch the bus again, but it was full, and he pulled the sticker off. And apparently, the night before, Harry checked on his father later that night, only to learn that the glider and the flight suit for Oscorp have been stolen, and Dr. Strom was dead. But at school, Peter was just having his lunch, but his spider sense tingled for the first time. MJ slipped over some juice, and Peter caught her and all the food on her plate. He had great reflexes.
And Peter went back to his lunch wondering what just happened, and then suddenly the fork was stuck to his hand and a web came out, and he accidentally webbed another food cart or plate or tin, whatever. I'm sorry, but I'm not usually rude like that. But then Peter threw it behind him and it landed on Flash, and it was stuck to the web on his wrist. Flash thought Peter did it to humiliate him, but Peter didn't know what was going on, so he went to his locker to find out. But Flash just followed him and walked full speed ahead after Peter.
And we get an epic scene in slow motion. A kid throws a paper airplane, a wasp is buzzing, and some dude spits out spit wads out of a straw.
Ew, gross! But then we see Flash pulling out a roar, and we see his punch in slow motion, and Peter dodges it. And Flash isn't having it since he still thinks Peter threw that tin of food at him on purpose and starts a fight. But thanks to his spider powers, Flash is punching in slow motion in Peter's perspective and dodges it. And Flash's bike comes in and pulls that can at JT off Ben 10 Races Against Time on him. And Flash multi-punches Peter, which is a reference they make to this movie in the Deadpool and Wolverine trailer, which Ben forced me to watch.
It was not the trailer, Gwen. That was only a picture on the internet. I thought it was interesting.
Why were you looking at it? You know we're not supposed to be watching R-rated movies until we're like 18.
Just to mess with you, since you're a stickword for rules, Gwen. I didn't watch the trailer, but everyone else except Kevin did. Also, Kevin has seen this movie too. Peter caught Flash's fist and gives him a good punch, and the teacher or student drops food on Flash since he's been humiliated. And everyone just gets out. But Harry is amazed. But Peter was realizing what he did and ran out. Peter then went into an alleyway where spikes came out his fingers, and then he proceeded to climb up a wall. Peter got higher and higher. He got so high to realize he got powers from the spider. And we get a meme row. Wahoo!
Peter was happy, jumping from building to building, and he was enjoying himself, but then he couldn't jump to the next building. He saw the web on his wrist, and he thought he could swing across with the web. And then came the funniest scene ever, the Go Web Go scene, which actually became the inspiration for that scene in the original Ben 10 series where Ben first uses Cannon Bolt. What a coincidence! You know, for all the references your show makes to Spider-Man, Ben, you and Spider-Man would make great friends.
Except Spider-Man didn't get his powers when he was 10. He got them as a teenager. And Peter shoots his first web and actually hitches on at the train. Crane! Dang it! Peter screams for his life as he swings from the crane and bumps into a billboard. Later, he returns home and sees a note from Uncle Ben, and he takes out the trash and notices how MJ's father treats MJ. And Peter tells MJ that everybody shouts, and they talk about what they're going to do when they graduate. Peter wants to move into the city, work his way through college with a job as a photographer. And MJ wants to act on stage, and Peter told MJ she was going to light up Broadway. But later, the next day, before the next day, Peter noticed MJ's ride in Flash's new car, and first he tried finding cars for Aunt May and Uncle Ben to use, and turns out there was a wrestling competition for $3,000. And Peter had to think of a costume, and then we get the costume montage. And the designs were rejected. Then the final design was his classic Spider-Man suit. The next morning, he was testing webs in his room, and Peter came up with an excuse to go, and by saying he needs to go to the library, but Uncle Ben dropped him down. Uncle Ben gave Peter a lecture about the school fight, and that this would be the man Peter was going to be for the rest of his life, and taught Peter his important lesson. With great power comes great responsibility. Kinda like how Grandpa Max lectures me whenever I use the Omnitrix to get back at someone whenever they're bullying me, if that someone is Kevin, or misuse it. But Peter throws some harsh words and enters the ring to take on Bonesaw.
And the commentator is played by none other than Bruce Campbell. The guard in MJ's played Spider-Man 2, the waiter in Spider-Man 3, and Pizza Pop in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And Peter's name is the Human Spider. Wait a minute, I already said that. But the commentator introduces him as the Amazing Spider-Man, which may have predicted the Amazing Spider-Man. And Peter beats Bonesaw up. Even when it looks like Bonesaw's mopping the floor of him, Peter beats Bonesaw. But later, Peter gets scammed.
$100? The ad said 3,000. And yes, Peter tried to tell the fight promoter he needed the money, but he missed the part where that's his problem. And Peter stormed out, and that's when the burglar came in. Hey! What the heck? Put the money in the bag. Then the burglar, Dennis Carradine, beats the fight promoter off and gets away with the money. Peter lets him go. However, the fight promoter is really angry, but Peter missed the part where that's his problem and takes the elevator, only to find out that Uncle Ben was shot in cold blood by the burglar. And filled with anger, Peter goes out for revenge, where Peter learns to properly swing and won't stop until the burglar's caught, and then lands on the car and it crashes. But meanwhile, the warehouse, the burglar looks out for Peter, and Peter pushes him against the window, only to notice that's the same man at the elevator. Peter feels guilty, but the burglar turns the gun on Peter and falls out the window, and then he goes through the Chrysler building, where he gets to go away from everything as sin in No Way Home. Peter and Aunt May are mourning the death of Uncle Ben, who's a different Ben from me, and they both cry and hug each other.
I feel you. I really do.
And General Slocum comes to inspect Quest Aerospace's astrosuit, with Captain Curtis as the pilot. But General Slocum wants to put Norman Osborn out of business, but then the Green Goblin blows up Quest Aerospace and General Slocum in it, and shift the graduation. And then Norman gets an apartment for Peter and Harry, but when they get home, Peter is still upset about Uncle Ben's death. Feels bad what he says, but Aunt May comforts him and said that Peter was meant for great things and they wouldn't disappoint Uncle Ben. And then remember what he said about great power coming great responsibility, and thus that's how Peter becomes Spider-Man and stops crime. Dresses like a spider, looks like a bug. We should all just give him one big hug. Look out! Woo! Here comes the Spider-Man. Not everyone likes Spider-Man, because then we cut to J. Jonah Jameson, played by J.K. Simmons himself. And turns out he hates Spider-Man. Kinda like in Ben 10 Ultimate Alien, Ben is hated by another newspaper dude named Will Harang. That's another thing you and Spider-Man have in common, Ben. Oh, gee whiz, how much more stuff does Spider-Man and I have in common? But then, Robbie Robertson, played by Bill Nunn, Babe Brandt, played by Elizabeth Banks, who also happens to voice Wildstyle in the Lego Movie and the Lego Movie 2, and Ted Raimi, who voices Hoffman in this movie, have a mandatory meeting with Jameson, and they can't get a close-up of Spider-Man, so Jameson addresses cash money for pictures of Spider-Man, and later, Peter is fired from Dr. Connor's job. Yes, the same Dr. Connors that's played by Dylan Baker.
But Dylan Baker's Dr. Connors doesn't show up till Spider-Man 2, along with a silly landlord who never stops talking about rent.
And then Peter finds his job at the Daily Bugle the night before, or after he takes some pictures of Spider-Man, finds some robbers as well as cops, but J. Jonah Jameson kinda liked him, and Peter was freelance, and said they could Peter some money as he's paid too, for photos of Spider-Man, and all he had to do was get a paycheck to Betty Brandt, and she welcomed him to the Bugle with open arms. Later, we cut to Oscorp Tower, and Norman has a meeting with the board, and that Oscorp has surpassed Quest Aerospace as the principal supplier for the United States military, right? All because the Green Goblin bombed it. But then the board announces they're selling Oscorp to Quest Aerospace. Norman is not pleased, and this board expected his resignation in 30 days, and he tries to reason that Oscorp was his company, and then he got upset. You know how much I sacrificed?
And then Norman is fired from his own company. And then we cut to the Oscorp World Unity Festival.
And the festival's current song that was playing at this moment was My Nutmeg Fantasy by Macy Gray. Welcome to the Oscorp World Indie Festival. Let's hear it for Macy Gray. And there were some newspapers of the Daily Bugle when people were already starting to hate Spider-Man. While the Bugle's papers was, Peter looked worried, and Harry was hanging out with MJ at the top of the balcony, and Norm was wondering who the mystery girl was that Harry was dating. Turns out it was MJ, probably why Harry didn't mention her. I really like the song. I'm so angry the Green Goblin interrupted because danger strikes as the Green Goblin comes in. And then he throws pumpkin bombs everywhere and kills the board members. And there's actually a delete scene of the movie where Stan Lee references the X-Men. And Toadkid sees Peter's webs and asks them to keep it secret, his identity well. And then Peter rips his shirt open, suiting up into his Spider-Man suit. And the Green Goblin, kills the board members. Wait, we already said that. And Spider-Man kicks the goblin off his glider. Only a kid in danger, and then he saves the kid. You know, if I turned into Heat Blast, I would have done it faster. However, the Green Goblin tricks the cops into thinking he surrenders and beats them up. And kicks Spider-Man halfway, and then starts shooting him. As Peter gets to MJ, the Green Goblin beats him up. Spider-Man falls off. Spider-Man wipes his face and pulls the plug out of his glider, making it go haywire. And then Spider-Man saves MJ and leaves her on the top of a building. And MJ is amazed. But they didn't know the whole story behind the Green Goblin. And Norman was about to drink his morning drink when suddenly the Green Goblin started talking to him through a hallucination. And then Norman learned about the accident with the performance enhancers and persuades Norman to let the Spider-Man join them. This Green Goblin is a complete psycho. The half of Norman, not so much. J. Jonah Jameson did not come up with the name for the Green Goblin in the comics. Blame Marvel for that, since his name's the Green Goblin. But Jameson wanted a quarter every time they said Green Goblin.
The Green Goblin breaks into the Bugle just to find Spider-Man, but then Spider-Man is actually hanging upside down behind. But Jameson thought they were in it together, but Spider-Man webbed his mouth. Well, the Green Goblin used knockout gas to take him to a secret location in order to persuade Spider-Man to join him as a proposal, and flew off. And then that night he remembered what he'd said.
In spite of everything you've done for them, eventually they will hate you. MJ's in trouble with a bunch of robbers, and Spider-Man saves the day once again, and MJ actually gets to kiss him. And the next morning, there are some fire trucks, and a woman's baby was trapped inside, but Spidey saved the day again. And then a cop comes in with an arrest warrant for Spider-Man. And then there was still someone in there. Spider-Man went to see who, but that was actually the Green Goblin trying to get his attention. What about my generous proposal? Are you in or are you out? It's you who's out, Gobby. Out of your mind. The Green Goblin throws some razor bats and Spider-Man dodges them, which cuts through the suit. And it's a hand combat when Spider-Man leaves. The Green Goblin is angry. Spider-Man declined his offer. And it was the Thanksgiving dinner time, and Norman brought some fruitcake. And Peter got some cranberry sauce, which he had to beat an old lady with a stick with to get those. Why didn't Miss Captain Marvel get cranberries when she had to fight an old lady in Captain Marvel? Maybe because she didn't really have cranberries? Anyway, they were about to say Grace, but Aunt May noticed Peter was bleeding and decided to patch it up. And Norman asked how it happened, and Peter said a bike messenger knocked him down. And thus, Norman had to leave, resulting in the Green Goblin taking over, saying things that Norman wouldn't say to Harry, which made MJ leave too. And thus, Thanksgiving dinner is ruined. However, the Green Goblin suggests destroying Peter Parker, but Norman is hesitant. And the Green Goblin says first they attack Peter's heart, and then at Aunt May's house she prays, and the Green Goblin assaults her.
Then Peter realizes the Green Goblin knows his identity, and he's still sad about Aunt May in the hospital. And Harry comes to visit.
However, Harry tells Norman that Peter's always loved MJ, and Norman then starts to feel bad. And that was not being busy was no excuse for being away with his family. And Norman promised he was going to make things up to Harry, and then they hugged. And thus, Aunt May was awake. And then Aunt May told Peter he had to tell MJ how he felt, and everybody else knew. And Peter went to call MJ and warned her not to go up any dark alleys, but it was the Green Goblin on the phone. And MJ was on top of the bridge. And Green Goblin was about to trap a bunch of school kids, too. The itsy bitsy spider went up the water spout. Down came the goblin and took the spider out. Okay, no more Willem Dafoe Spider-Man impressions, please. And then Spider-Man slingshots to the rescue and swings on. And then the Green Goblin offers a choice, MJ or the school kids. Peter chose both. And then some pirates on a boat came to help. And Spider-Man asked MJ to climb down, and some people on the railway were throwing stones at the goblin.
Because the people of New York decided to teach Green Goblin a lesson. You mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. And then the school kids and MJ were safe, but Spidey was not in the clear yet, as he was trapped in a church by the Green Goblin and beats him up, and insists he's gonna finish MJ nice and slow. And before he tries to kill Spider-Man, Peter stops it with brute force.
And Peter webs up the goblin's legs and pulls a wall down on him and beats him up. But then Norman's in control again and reveals to Peter his identity. But Norman tries to tell Peter that the goblin had control of him the whole time. And Norman begged Peter to help him. And then Peter told Norman he had a father, and it was his Uncle Ben. And the Green Goblin took control once again with the Godspeed, Spider-Man. And Spider-Man dodged the glider, but impaled Norman instead. Norman asked Peter not to tell Harry, and then Norman died. But meanwhile, in another universe, when Peter and Doctor Strange try casting a spell to make Peter forget, or everyone forget he's Spider-Man, he pulls in visitors who know Peter Parker's Spider-Man instead from other universes, which leads into Spider-Man Far From Home. Bingo! Peter laid Norman's body down, and Harry is so angry he assumes Spider-Man killed Norman, and then takes out a gun and notices Spider-Man was gone.
Peter then tries to comfort Harry, and Harry swears to make Spider-Man pay. And Peter didn't know how to tell Harry he was Spider-Man and went to see Uncle Ben's grave. But Peter, afraid to put MJ in more danger, puts her in the friend zone and remembers what his Uncle Ben said: with great power comes great responsibility.
So, Peter had to find a way to live up to that motto, and then we get an epic final scene, and that wraps it up for the movie. This movie never gets old. We should do this again sometime. I already agreed to do a review of this movie and Ben 10 Race Against Time. Now we're talking. Hey Gwen, wanna do my homework for me?
I'm not your homework assistant, Ben. How about you do it yourself?
Ah, man. Come on, Gwen. You're no fun.